Welcome to PASSIONEER Magazine, the podcast, where you'll hear inspirational stories, encouraging news, and in-depth interviews with authors, influencers, CEOs, and thought leaders. PASSIONEER Magazine, the podcast. Bold ideas, brave pursuits, boundless inspiration. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me here today, Garrett. I'm really excited about not only finding out a little bit more about what you do, about your life purpose, but why you feel that this is your life's purpose. Here on PASSIONEER, we love to kind of pick the brains of the folks who come by and visit. I believe that everyone has a story to share about their success journey, and it really and truly makes us better people for having listened. With that being said, when you were a child, what did you think you were going to be when you grew up? So many times we hear how other people, those folks in our lives, kind of influence. You think you're going to be, girls think I'm going to be a ballerina, I'm going to be a teacher, I'm going to be a fireman, a police officer. What did you think you were going to be when you were growing up?
Yes, I thought I was going to be an actor. As I got into my late high school and early college, a theater director said to me, "I think you could be the next Laurence Olivier." And he's an old time guy, like born in 1907, I think. And I took that to heart. I believed him, and that set me on a course to pursue, acting as a career.
And I can definitely understand it now. Those who follow me know I've mentioned my grandmother on numerous occasions.
Yeah.
My grandmother is one of those folks born in 1908. So I kind of know that's I said, ooh, because I knew who you were talking about.
Okay.
Great actor. So yeah, that was definitely a compliment there. So, I find that the teachers that we have in our lives, the professors, they are such great mentors, and they give us such great moments to look back on when we reflect about those nuggets that they gave us along the way. We may not have realized how important they were in the moment, but upon that reflection, we see that they really do have great, powerful moments with us. Would you agree with that?
I would, yes.
Now, speaking of those moments, have there been any pivotal moments in your life that you can recall that have helped you become the person that you are today that might stand out a little bit more than others?
There have been, so many, by the way. But I would say probably, well, but by the way, the Laurence Olivier thing led me on a path to go to Hollywood, go to LA, and that's where actors go. And my big learning lesson there was rejection in this world is a standard. So that really created some grit. In hindsight, like I didn't know then I was devastated.
Right, of course.
Devastated. But in hindsight, it helped me realize that, rejection is a standard, and it thickened up my skin in terms of dealing with rejection. And it created this sort of, I think, really great trait, which, we call grit. So I think that was pivotal. And then I think, getting into the business side of things, I had a really great mentorship moment from a director on one of my boards. And he sat me down one day and he was borderline angry with me. And he said, if you don't stop micromanaging, you're going to kill your company.
Agreed.
So there's a big, a lot more to that. But those were two pivotal moments for me. There are many others, but those ones really stick out.
And that is such great information. I know that I am one of those people who is not motivated by micromanagement.
Right.
So when I was,
right?
right? Like when I was in the working world, you know, when I was a worker bee,
Yeah.
did not motivate me at all. It's 100% a turn off. I think they call it an ick now.
Yeah.
I don't like it. So I find that I tend not to do it in my management style with my teams. So you're so right. I'm so glad that he mentioned that to
Yeah.
you. Not saying that you were doing that, overly so, but just that
I
big
was.
wisdom.
I was. He was right. And thank the good Lord that he actually was transparent enough to go there with me, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we do have to learn to walk that very fine line because there are many people like us that don't need the micromanagement. We are great with give me the instructions, give me the direction, what is my task, and I'll make sure that it's done on time or even ahead of time. But unfortunately, there are some folks that kind of do need that a little bit more hands-on. I won't say micromanagement, but they do need a few more check-ins than perhaps other members of the team. So we do have to be wise leaders there. And I love that you were able to take that constructive criticism and make the necessary changes. I found that some people are offended
Mm.
by the constructive criticism and they end up kind of sabotaging themselves because they don't take it to heart when it really and truly was a negative wisdom.
Appreciate that. You know,
Mhm.
especially appreciate that, especially in context of the story, because it was the same person that said to me along the way, "Hey, when it comes to getting feedback, one of the best rules he's adopted in his life was um, he always likes to stop and say, 'Okay, maybe it's me.' That's always his first step. Maybe it's me." And he had been mentoring me for a while. So fortunately, I was able to go, all right, maybe there's something here that I
Mhm.
don't see, you know? A
Mhm.
buddy, a buddy in college said to me one time, the eye cannot see itself.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, maybe I got a blind spot here. And turns out I did, which was revolutionary, you know?
Mhm. Mhm. That is such a good something that we can tweet out there, right? That definitely something that we can share on social media, and it's true. I think that if my little version of that is if I believe someone has said something a little out of sort from
Yeah.
that context, right? If I say, well, perhaps I misheard,
Mm,
or let me put a different tone on it. Let me say it differently. Do I still feel the same way? If
yeah.
I can kind of take some of the bite out of it, can I take the bite out? And if I can, then let's continue the conversation. If I can't take the bite out of it, then maybe they were trying to bite me. So,
Yeah.
sometimes people really are trying to be that gruff with us. They really are
Sure.
trying to be that way. So I love that bit of wisdom. I'm gonna definitely have to hold on to that one and share that as well. Now, when it comes to the core mission of your business, and we know that so many entrepreneurs, CEOs have something that they are trying to achieve in that they are trying to bring peoples together. They are trying to bring resources to an underprivileged, marginalized group, so on and so forth. When it
Yeah.
comes to the purpose of the mission of your business, what would you say really resonates with the community that you serve?
Yeah. Great question. Um, the mission of Clarity Ops is to help more businesses succeed more often. And that is really in the wake of the historic stat that 9 out of 10 businesses fail. That stat has not changed. And my hypothesis is that they they my hypothesis is they mostly go out of business because of a lack of operational infrastructure.
Mm.
And but it turns out that is probably one of the topics that is mostly ignored and or misunderstood, and so people don't do anything about it. And they tend to blame shift why their business went under when at the end of the day they just didn't have rails. And I really believe that if businesses have rails, they'll succeed more.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I had no idea that it was 9 out of 10. We hear, horrible statistics about restaurants, and I think everyone knows that one, right? It's like, oh, you want to be a restaurateur? Oh, that's crazy. They go out of business more than they and everyone feels that way about a restaurant, but yet you don't look at many times the statistics for the industry that you're in. You just know that it's your passion, you want to do it, and you hope and pray, cross your fingers, say a prayer, light a candle, whatever your jam is, that your business is going to be okay. But like you said, if we have those parameters, those rails, we need to know what we should and should not do. I love that. So even your business needs a coach. Individuals need coaches, business needs coaches as well. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, maybe a slight variation of that.
Okay.
Because by the way, I do believe in coaches, but Clarity Ops Value Prop is not coaching per se. Instead, it's fast and easy to implement tools that are proven that you can self-manage and govern without a coach. There's obviously guidelines and instructions for implementing, but the beauty of them is you actually can manage them yourself. And these, in this day and age, we're so busy, and especially growth-driven businesses and leaders, they don't have time to pause.
Yeah.
You're right. They don't have time to pause. I just heard a really great story of the founders of Banana Republic, and they talk about how they went through this very thing. They tried to scale. They did scale, but what they ended up doing is doing what most businesses do: scaling into complexity and chaos. And he says, in his story, he says, we just never did have the time to stop and build correctly. And as a result, we ended up in a world of hurt.
Mhm.
And so my goal is to not have to make people stop, but to give them tools that are pre-built that they can drop right in and keep on going,
Oh, I like that.
and then
Mhm.
self-manage, just because
Mhm.
time is so important to
I
us.
love that. Right. And you're so right. I think for many people, the reason why they don't utilize more services or resources is because they do think they have to, I've got to meet every week, or there's something we
Mhm.
have to do every month, or there's some type of check-in or email or chat
Right.
or group, right? And
Schedule
it's
a
like
meeting, right?
not right. And it's like not look, not another Zoom call, is it? And it's like nothing against Zoom, but it's like not another call. So I love that you are able to give that
Mm.
to whoever needs that type of service, and they're able to hit the ground running with it. I love that.
Mm.
Now, you said a really great thing, and that is being able to slow down and really see where you are in the moment. Look at the statistics, do what needs to be done. I have watched so many documentaries about companies who are household names who grew so fast.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that kind of bit them in the butt, and then they were like, uh-oh, what have we done? Now we have to start, downsizing or selling off or whatever they have to do to
So
kind of
true.
overcorrect. And you are so right. There's nothing wrong with taking a pause to see where you are and really taking your temperature.
Oh, you are spot on. Tweet that one for sure. Not only is there nothing wrong with it, I would actually say it is a requirement
Yeah.
if your goal is to win.
Mhm,
If your
mhm.
goal is to win, it it's required. And it will be the best investment you ever make.
Oh, absolutely. I think we have this misunderstanding that if we are not on the proverbial wheel, that if we're not constantly going, then
Yes.
we're not good business people, right? That if
Yes.
we need to take a nap or stop for lunch or just breathe, then we're not being as good as we could be. And I think that's detrimental to one's health, physical health, mental health, and if I'm hearing correctly, business health as well. So I know those are things that I do. And it
Hmm.
doesn't necessarily mean that just because I do it, that it's good for everyone, but it sounds like it really and truly is. And I am so glad to know. Good. I will keep sharing that. As a counselor,
Yeah.
as a coach, when it comes to the individual person, I'm telling people, slow down, take
Yeah.
a beat, you know, the world will be there tomorrow. So it's nice to know that our business can take that breath as well. I love it.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to setbacks, and every business is going to experience a hiccup or two along the way, it's a part of the growth process. But how do you deal with setbacks or obstacles, or how do you advise those that you assist? How should you look at it, and how do you move forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. Especially because in business, setbacks are standards. Like you can just count on them. Count on them, right?
Right.
And so I really think, we got the old RCA acronym, root cause analysis is a strategy that business leaders use to solve problems. And I think one of the best steps business leaders, because they're the ones that are paid to drive and make sure things are well, is to stop and seek the truth about the problems.
Mhm.
A lot of times, especially if you're really close to it, like a founder, or you have something, some skin on the line,
Mhm.
uh, ego can creep in, and we don't want to be honest about the real problems, or we're so afraid of the problem that we don't want to dig.
Yeah.
It's sort of akin to, like, when you go to a doctor, you don't want them to guess, or you don't want them to sort of you want them to diagnose and dig deep. So
Absolutely.
I think you know being pursuing the honest truth about the problem is number one,
Mhm.
and then surround yourself with some people that can validate that. Then once you have validation, I think then you get into understanding, trying to figure out how to fix the problem,
Yeah.
not with a band-aid, but fix the problem so that it goes away, and there are constraints in place to make sure that it doesn't come back.
Mhm. I like that. I like
You know what
that.
I mean?
Mhm. Cure
And
it. Fix it. Like, really
yes,
fix it.
yeah,
I like what you
yeah,
said. Don't just put a Band-Aid on it. Don't just put Vaseline on it and say, "You're fine," but really tend to it. You're spot on there. Mhm.
yep, that's right. And then build a health plan.
Yeah.
So just like we would treat our body or our mind,
Yeah.
business is the same. Put a health plan in place so that you can maintain and support that plan in perpetuity. And don't allow that plan to live in silo, but make it transparent to all the players on the team so everybody's aware about the problem we had, the problem we fixed,
Mhm.
and the health solution in place to make sure that the problem doesn't come back.
Yeah.
And then lastly, you put key leaders in place as oversight mechanisms, um, to maintain that into into the future. So
Yeah.
those would be the kind of like four high level. There's a lot of moving parts in there that need to come together, but
Right.
you know,
Now, do you think that the maintenance part, the health maintenance of business, do you think that that's a part that many people overlook? They have people that they feel are perfect in
mhm,
place.
yeah,
They may be slow to coming around to what the issue is, but they finally have looked it square in the eye and say, "Okay, fine,
yes.
that's what it is, and we're going to fix it." But that maintenance part, that preventative care, do you think that that's where a lot of people don't pay as much attention as they should?
Yes. And I think there's another component there that they also ignore. Most businesses ignore, and that is the documenting of that health plan.
Ah, mhm.
Right. And so they find the leaders, and they typically have a few meetings, do some whiteboarding, send out a memo on email or on Slack. And then those leaders start, because everybody's going fast, right?
Right.
And so that's the extent of the plan, and you put it in the hands of the leaders. So you never really have true documentation. And then what is absorbed as a health plan into the leaders that receive, it goes into their brain and nowhere else.
And that's it. Yeah.
And then when they leave, all of that IP leaves with them. and now it's all for naught. And now you have a very short life cycle of that season, and whoever comes in to replace, you're back to square one.
Yeah. Oh my heavens. As you're saying that, I'm I'm just thinking, oh wow. Oh no.
Right.
Oh wow. Right? It's like,
I'm
oh
with you.
my goodness.
It-
I can I can just see how, thinking back to some of the places where when I was an employee, and how you're right, there was something that was changed, a new person came in, and you do, as an employee, think, didn't we already go over this? Why
Right.
are we starting all over? Or why does this person feel as though they have to start all over? But that
Right.
was the missing part.
Mm.
The person who left took all of the information, all of the wisdom, all of the planning, all
All
of
of
the
it.
charts with them. And
Yeah.
you do have to start all over again. Wow. I think that's definitely going to be an aha moment for someone out there
Sure.
that's like, put it on a paper. The
Yeah.
same way that we tell, our individual selves to write it down and make it plain. Put before you what your goals are, right? Write it
Truth.
out. We should
Write
do
it
that
down.
for our businesses as well. I love that. Now, I want to look at, kind of along that same vein, when you are in the middle of having to make some of these snap decisions, these high pressure decisions, and you have to call it. You don't have time to, ponder over coffee. You don't have time to go to lunch. You don't have 24 hours to think about it.
Mhm.
Are there any things that we should really consider or know going in? How do we make those high pressure decisions in a snap?
Yeah. And these are like sort of crisis moments.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, these are situations where you don't have the luxury of doing an RCA, you know?
Right.
You know, and you got to move fast. Well, let's see. A couple things come to mind. Number one, focus, pursuing and purposing to focus on this crisis, I think is probably a best friend. The other thing I've seen is when there's crisis, we tend to get a little frantic.
Mhm.
And typically it's because something broke or something happened unexpectedly, and people tend to blame others. So I'd say focus and don't play the blame game. You can do an RCA
Mhm.
later and figure out if people made bad decisions or missed something or whatever. But in the middle of a 24 to 72 hour, we got to make decisions now. That's the wrong time to be pointing fingers, because all of the constructive thinking goes away.
Yeah.
So I'd say those are two great places to start. The next thing I'd say is what I mentioned earlier is pursue honesty. Again, be as honest and objective about the crisis, because that's only going to serve the output of the decision in the best way,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
I'm sure you've seen that.
Mhm. Oh my goodness. Oh, these are such nuggets. Oh, these
Um,
are such nuggets.
And then I think the other thing, hopefully what the truth will empower is you don't put out a fire with a garden hose, or you don't use a garden hose to put out a matchstick fire, right?
Right.
And so that's all part of the calibration there, in terms of, using the objective truth. And then maybe the last one, we talked about it earlier, put a plan in place.
Yeah.
Identify the owners of the steps that are going to be required,
Mhm.
have one person own the accountability for all those steps, and put deadlines in place so the execution gets done in that very short window of time you have.
Mhm.
So you take the decisions that were made and execute them.
Yeah. Oh, that is good. That is good stuff, Garrett. I am so glad I asked you that
Thank you.
question, because I could just, in my mind, I'm thinking, now I know this is for Passioneer Magazine, the podcast for the business side of what I do, but I am definitely going to encourage that my counseling clients, my coaching folks
Mm,
definitely listen to this episode, because there's such good information that we can
mm,
also gather for the self, right? Not
yeah,
just for our business, but for the self as well. And when you were
yeah,
saying, that lovely garden hose, sometimes it is not enough, but sometimes it is too much. And boy, was that a great image when you said that. And it's like, yeah, I can see someone saying, there you go with that little garden hose, right? I need you to give me more. Or
Right.
someone going, you always overreact. You know, all you needed was just a little, and here you go with the hose,
That's right.
you
I
know?
like that.
So it's
Perfect.
like I love that visual, but there was so much there that I
Mm,
believe that folks can unpack and take the
mm,
pieces that belong for them as well as for their business. Now, I want to ask you a question, kind of the flip side. Most people
sure.
ask the question of what's a piece of advice that a mentor has shared or you've gathered along the way that has changed your life, right? I
Yeah.
don't want to know that one. I
Okay.
want to know,
Okay.
right? I want to, because I know you get that asked a billion times in every interview that you do. So I want to try to ask something that's a little bit different.
Okay.
So, what is a piece of advice that you were given that you're glad you didn't actually follow through with? That the person had, really great intentions, but it wasn't appropriate for you. It wasn't the right thing for you. But you realize, man, they really weren't trying to throw me under the bus or anything. Or perhaps it
Mm,
was their own limited view of the world and they were really trying to be great, but it didn't apply to you.
okay. That's a doozy. I have I have a hybrid answer. I have a hybrid answer, and it was this one, because here's why it's hybrid. I did follow it, but
Okay.
it bit me badly, of which then created a really fantastic learning curve that had great results. So the advice was hire great people and set them free. That was the advice. Hire great people and set them free. And this is early in my career with one of my businesses where we were hockey sticking in growth. We just, gotten past 50 plus employees. And so I was like, well, that sounds really great. You're a smart person. You've been here, done that.
Mhm.
Well, turns out why I believe that was really bad advice is because really great people actually need great direction too.
Yeah.
There are a few there are a few positions in the org chart that sit at the very closer to the top. And they're in charge of what Jeff Bezos calls one-way door decision making. But they are the 2 percentile. Everybody else needs really strong, clear instructions that
Mhm.
help them govern, you know, and
Mhm.
and make and do the right actions. So I took that advice, and that turned into a year of heartache and a
Mhm.
year of frustration, not only for me, but for the entire company, you know,
Yeah.
as we were looking to scale. And so um, that's the hybrid answer. And I still stand by it because I know there's a lot of posts on LinkedIn that say, hire great people and set them free. But I would strongly disagree, and I would strongly recommend you be very cautious with that advice.
Yeah. Yeah. There are such great, like you said, there are some great quotes out there, great pieces of advice. And I think that people do have to learn to take what belongs to them and let the rest go. There are amazing cars out there.
Uh-huh.
I am a fan of a beautiful car, right? I don't really
Okay.
care. Don't get me wrong. I know what it is when it goes by, but I don't
Okay.
care what it is when it goes by. But it's like, that's a pretty one. Or, oh, I love the polish there, or the color there, the paint job there. And it's like, oh, this is really great. But at the same time, I think that sometimes people need to be practical when they need to be practical. I think people need to be able to dream when they need to be able to dream. But then
Yeah.
I think people need to be able to implement when it is time to implement, but be okay in the stage where you are. Don't just because everyone tells you that you need a Bugatti doesn't mean that you need a Bugatti. If you just got your driver's license, not the car for you, right? Maybe you
Yeah.
should start off with more of a family kind of
Yeah.
car until you get some teeth there. So I hear what you're saying. Every piece of advice can be great advice on its own. You just have to figure out if it's great advice for
Yeah. I
you.
think, context is key.
Yeah.
Like
Uh,
we have a decision-making matrix. And that way you can sort of like when it comes to decision making in an org and where do you where do you architect freedom and where do you build constraints? And if you can plot that objectively, then you can avoid giving a dreamer state decision-making capability to a technician who needs to be following exact coordinate instructions,
yes.
right?
Yes. Yes.
Remember a few years ago when AWS went down on the entire or Eastern Hemisphere of the United
Mhm,
States?
mhm.
That's because even AWS didn't have constraints at that technician level to prevent a coder from having some fun and
Yeah.
experimenting.
Yeah.
So
Oh
you see
my
what I mean?
goodness. Yes.
And so that like in the real life of business where people's lives are on the line, when profit is on the line, when loss is
Mhm.
on the line, I think that's my context around setting people free
Yeah.
and understanding where in this continuum where you should give the right people freedom
Yeah.
to bring value to the business, and where you should constrain others, not because you're trying to control them, but you're
Right.
protecting everybody's best interests.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can just feel someone nodding their head say, yes, we have SOPs for a reason. There are reasons why there are rules and there are protocols and there are tests and there are um, the road map for what we do and
Mm,
why we do it,
I
because
like
you're
roadmap.
right. There's always going to be that person that says, hey, the cat's away so the mice will play. I'm old enough to remember folks saying that.
Yes, yes.
And it's like this is I think going to be an eye-opening experience for some folks that may be just starting off, or they're looking for, how can I go to the next level?
Mhm.
And every time we level up, there are going to be some new issues that are be introduced to us. And if we can get that resource, that tool that you offer ahead of time, boy, is it going to make that transition that much easier.
Mm.
Not that I'm knocking, the University of Hard Knocks, but I
No,
mean,
no.
good grief, if we can avoid some of those hard knocks, then
Uh,
that is a beautiful thing. So
that's great.
I
I
love
love
it.
that.
I
Yes,
love it.
yes.
Now, I want to ask one last question of you, and
Yeah.
that is, I talk to a lot of folks that are also authors. Some of the other ventures that I do, I speak with a lot of authors. So I love reading. So I'm going to kind of tie this all in with a
Okay.
book reference. If your business were a book, what
Yes.
title would you give it and why?
I love the question. I would give it the title From Complexity to Clarity, a playbook for a new generation of leaders.
Ooh, I like it. I like it.
That's the
I
book
would
name.
I would definitely take that down off the shelf and kind of thumb through
Okay.
it a little bit. I know we're not supposed to judge a book by its title, by its cover, by any of those things, but I'm still that type of person that you can hook me with a really great title, and
Mm.
I am gonna stop and kind of thumb through the book and say, you know what? I'll give this one a try.
Okay.
So
I
so I
appreciate
like
that.
that. The title is compelling, but I love that it's also looking forward, that it's forward
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah.
I read a lot of historic reference, so to have something that is looking forward, that's trying to inspire the next generation, which is a lot of what my work does, is trying to inspire that next person behind you in line, the next generation behind you, that next
Yeah.
group that wants to do. So I love that. I
I
love
think
that.
I think the new, there's a new generation, and my opinion is the new generation actually cares. They have more empathy and
Yes.
care for the world than historic
Yes.
generations, the one before it.
Yeah.
And I think they're beginning to identify that, operating business in chaos was a big fat lie. It is a big fat lie. And
Yeah.
that is, although it's been sort of accepted as this just how it is, I think increasingly the new generation is saying there's got to be a better way.
Yeah.
Like there's
Yeah.
got to be a better way, because when a business operates in chaos, so do its people.
Yes.
And when people are paid to work in a business 8, 10, 12, 15 hours a day, and it's chaotic, that means the stress is high and the happiness is low. And where do you think that unhappiness leaves the business place at the end of the day? With those people, which means it then goes home. It goes home to their partner. It
Yeah.
goes home to their kids, to their pets, and it goes home in their heart and head.
Yeah.
And so if you think about it, the new generation has this amazing opportunity to transform the workplace,
Yeah.
with some hopefully easy to follow, fast to implement tools that will revolutionize how they operate.
Yeah. You
The
are
book.
you are so right there, because that person that you just described,
Yeah.
they don't get to enjoy my conversation by listening to podcasts or watching videos. They're coming to me for counseling. They're coming
Oh.
to me to undo some of that stress that they've been
Mm.
under, because now there's pressure between themselves and their significant other, because
Right.
it's really something going on at work, but they don't know how to articulate that. So you are so right. One of the things that I have learned that Gen Z really has a good grasp on is calling mental health days. I'm sorry, I need to take a wellness day.
Yeah.
It's nothing wrong with me. I'm fine. But if I don't just go to the beach or just take some time to myself today, I'm not going to be a good person to be around. And you're right. Past generations would say, oh my goodness, have a cup of coffee and get to your desk. And
Right.
even though there was a time and a place for that, I think that having that empathetic way of understanding workplace culture will produce the results that we're actually looking for. To me, it makes a more contented and a more loyal teammate or employee, because they feel like, hey, she cares about me or they care about me. So I'm going to care. I'm going to care about them. So
So I'm so
you're
with you.
so right.
So many benefits. So many benefits. And by the way,
Mhm.
I was thinking when you were sharing a second ago about the why your clients come to you. I'll bet if we could pull audio records from Alexa,
Yeah.
I'll bet there is a very high percentage of people coming home complaining about work.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so
I
we're going to
remember on the
solve that.
news, they were talking about the new trend of quiet quitting, that people were just like, I give up. I don't care anymore. I'm going to do as little as possible, whatever the minimum require is to keep my job, but I still don't want to be here. We can't continue to
No,
operate like that. It's not good for anyone. You wouldn't advise your friends, your child, your spouse to be in a toxic relationship with a person.
no,
Why would you want them to be in a toxic work relationship?
no.
So
I'm
yeah,
with you.
I I think slowly but surely we are starting to shift the world just a little bit, and this is why I love having people
Mm.
like you on, because we are trying to do our bit to make the
Yes.
world a better place. Garrett, thank you so much for spending some time with me here today on Passioneer Magazine, the podcast. I loved our conversation, and I think that we have definitely inspired someone to have an aha moment, get some clarity, and to
Sure.
use the wisdom that you shared today. Thank you so much for being with me.
Well, you're welcome. And thank you, Dr. Angela. I sure
Absolutely.
appreciate being here.
Absolutely. Now, one last question. Make sure we get it out there in someone's hearing. And that is, if they want to reach out to you, what's the best way to do that?
Oh, thank you. They can go to clarityops.co. And then I'm on LinkedIn, Garrett Delph. Go to my handle there and DM me or say hi.
I love it. Thank you again, Garrett, for being on today.
Thank you. Cheers.